Hello and welcome to Fusion Writing. Oh, this is our Tuesday map where we get to dive deeply into our wonderful subjects for the week. And Victoria has something special for us. Victoria?
Okay, so for this lesson, I'm going to take you into the 200 section of my book. We're going to go to page 276. And before we start talking about conflict-driven story, I ended last episode, you may recall, by telling you we would start this episode with the idea of theme. So what is a theme? Well, in my book, I tell you that a theme is simply something that you want to communicate on a higher level to your reader. What can that include? What does that look like? Well, I line out a few for you in the note card that I have you write for this section. The first one I offer is love. Love is a universal theme. Everybody loves a great love story. So that's a simple one. If you have some aspect of love or affection that you want to share with your reader over the course of the story, love is a great standard. A second one, another standard, is family. And you can start dividing that up. It can be the family you're born with. It could be chosen family. It could be some kind of family that you cobble together. Maybe the character builds a family into a group throughout the story. However you want to do it, the theme of family is another strong anchor. And then I give you a couple of others, like justice, a sense of belonging, or maybe trust. So those are all things that make up theme that become an underpinning for any kind of story, whether you're talking about something character-driven or you're talking about something conflict-driven. So with that high-level view of theme out of the way, let's look at what a conflict-driven story contains. You may recall last week, I gave you the 5 C's method. So for a character, the key pieces are your character's emotional arc and your character's evolution. Those are the things that change over the course of a story to show you development and movement along the timeline. Well, for a conflict-driven story, yes, you can have elements of character that change, but the important thing is those changes aren't internal emotional changes. You're not showing a deep emotional growth over the course of a quiet story. You're showing crisis, challenge, and conflict. And that's pushing that character in fits and starts and jumps. So often your conflict-driven story is way more action-oriented. That's kind of a hallmark of that kind of story is there's action, there's conflict, there's old cliffhangers pushing you through, getting you turning those pages late into the night. So just like a character-driven story, the first C in the 5 C's of conflict-driven story is a catalyst. Something has to happen in the beginning of the story that sets that character, sets that story in motion. Now, for a character-driven story, it's going to be something emotional because you're focusing on that internal mechanics of the character. For a conflict-driven story, that catalyst is going to be something explosive. It could literally be bombs blowing up or something that jars them out of their reality. So go for a big bang in that opening hook. The second thing is the same as with the character story. It's challenges. But instead of quiet, emotional, internal challenges, these challenges are big time. They're big things happening, whether it's something goes wrong, like, character falls out of a window. That's a big conflict. Character gets robbed. Character's house catches fire, burns to the ground. You've got big conflicts that are pushing them to take action and make inroads into that story. Then we get to the even bigger ones, which is crisis and climax. So where in your character story, we were exploring quiet things that move them along that character arc. In your conflict-driven story, those little challenges are building up to a climax, and then that crisis is the thing that breaks, that causes them to change. So in that way, you're peppering that narrative with bigger, conflicting, in-your-face, loud moments, rather than something that's quiet when you're writing a character-driven story. Obviously, the third one is the conclusion. You're always going to land your reader on the other side of where they began and show some kind of transformation. In your conflict-driven story, yes, your character can certainly change internally, but ultimately the hallmark is something fundamental about their world has shifted or changed. That's generally the outcome in something that's conflict-driven. is the whole world has changed. And then that character is shown living in the new world at the end of the story. So there you have it. That's two different ways of driving a reader through the story using either characters or conflict. And yes, you can combine them, but that's an advanced maneuver. Whichever way you approach, the idea is to just tell a full story that shows evolution, that shows growth, and satisfies the reader at the end. Now, when we get to next week, I'm going to have you make cards to document each of these kinds, and I'm going to give you some prompts that will point you toward the writing week. But no more spoilers. With that, I'm going to throw it over to Kathleen.
Oh, thank you so much, Victoria. That is really going to be fun. I can't wait to, get your book. I want to turn to the 200 section of your book. I want it so much. But I look forward next week to finding out what kind of cards I can make to memorialize this lesson. Well, Victoria got to show you where in her book her tough material comes from. Well, I have a book too, and we are talking about obedience, and that is also a page in my book, page 67. So if you have writing with emotion, be sure to check out page 67 on obedience. Well, as promised, we're going to be talking this week about how obedience changes depending on where in the character profile diagram it falls for your character. And we'll remember that we have 5 positions in the character profile diagram. We have the pinnacle position where it's just over your character's head. He doesn't even see it. It's up there over his head. He doesn't even know what's going on. We have the wing position where he's flighty. He knows that he'd like to do something, but just can't seem to get it together to make it happen. We have the rudder position, steering the ship. He gets to choose. He's in the power to choose, and the choice he makes will drive the directions of the story. We have the anchor position, where the character's probably going to do the right thing very solidly, very steadily. It provides an anchor spot in your story. And then we have the base position, where it's just fundamental to your character. That's who he is. You don't even have to think about it. He doesn't have to think about it any more than the pinnacle guy. It's just who he is. So now let's take those positions through the question of obedience. Well, let's start with the rudder because it's the easiest to understand. The rudder position where he's making the choice. Will I obey or won't I? Now that's a rather interesting question. What kind of character determines whether or not they'll obey? Well, there's a lot of possible situations. The simplest one is a kid. I don't want to. The kid decides, well, if I don't, will I get a licking or will I get a talking to or will I get time out at school? So he's weighing the consequences. You could have a person who is in a situation where he's not certain whether it's appropriate to obey. Yes, he's been given the order to obey, but he's not sure that this person is trustworthy who's made this request. Is that something he ought to follow? Or you have another person who's saying, we're both teammates and I'm trying to get this goal done. We're working together, but I've got the best idea. And he thinks he's got the best idea, but I know I've got the best idea, but he's sure he's got the best idea. Who's going to conform to the other? Those are some examples of the rudder position. The choice can be made. The character has the power to go either way, and he's going to make the decision. Well, let's do an easy one, the anchor. In the anchor position, your character is just a good team player. You can write this character in to be a very stable base. He performs a solid role in your story that's someone that your reader can relax with. All of this chaos going around, but this person can be relied upon. He's a team player. He knows his role, and he's pretty much always going to follow it. Aha! But here you can have a twist. Because if there's something that riles your character with obedience in the anchor position, it's something important. And because your reader knows it's in the anchor, they're going to catch on right away that this is really important if it's shaking him up. And then you've got your person in the base position. This is probably someone who is very, very happy to be the support person for others. He's a team player in the utmost. He's not trying to get his way. He's not being assertive. He's just, okay, I'll do whatever the team needs. You just tell me and I'll do it. and you can count on him unless, what if you throw something in here where this guy who's always happy to play the background role, he's the only one there when the bad news comes in. The others are all off someplace where they can't be reached, and it's all up to him suddenly to take a big leading role. Woo, you can play with that because your reader's so accustomed to him just being calm and passive and obedient. All right, let's go the other way up. From the rudder position where he can make a choice easily, let's go into the wing position. In the wing position, we've got two kinds of characters to look out for. One kind of character is your villain. Oh, yes, I'm going to be so obedient. Oh, yeah, you can count on me. Only you can't. He never intended to be obedient. He's going to do whatever he wants. This doesn't even have to be an outright villain character. This can just be somebody who's stubborn. It could be somebody who's a bit conniving. It could be somebody who's a bit manipulative, not super evil, but just a problem member of a team who says one thing and then doesn't pay any attention to following through with it. So there's your characters in the wing position. Another real good example of that is going to be your teens, where they're going to head off to do the thing that they were told to do, and then something fun is going to come along and they're going to forget to follow through with the thing they were supposed to do. So there's your wing. And now, what about the people with the pinnacle position? The thing about the pinnacle position is obedience isn't even on their mind. So what is it about them? Do they not hear that they were given an order? Or is that the kind of a character who just says, oh, rules are for other people. Oh, he didn't mean me when he said you all have to do that. I'm a case unto myself. I'm a rule unto myself. Nobody tells me what to do. I don't ever think about what anybody wants me to do. So there's all the places on the character profile diagram. Now, if your story is going to be about obedience, either the obedient act is going to have a central role to your conflict-driven story, and it's going to have a major role there where it has to play, or if it's a character-driven story, as Victoria was saying, you've got to make those changes. You've got to show the character making a proper change. And you can show that in two different directions and still have a positive change. You could have the person who's this wing guy, can't pull off obedience, finally figures out that, yes, I want to be a member of the team. Being a member of the team is the right thing. It comes into the rudder, he makes the choice, and he discovers how wonderful it is to be a good member of a team. You just made a character arc. Or you could have a different kind of a character arc. You've got the guy he's always the team player in the anchor position. He almost always does everything he wants. He suspects that there's something nefarious going on and that he's being pulled into an evil plot against his will. Now he has to discover, am I really going to obey that plot? And then boom, it goes into the wing. No, I cannot obey that plot. I've got to break free of it. So you can have your character transition go from the anchor up towards the wing or the wing down towards the anchor, and you've made a character transition in either direction. So take a look at this idea in your story. It makes a great subplot. It's a little bit weak to be the main plot of your story. You have to work really hard if you want it to be the main plot, but it can be a very, very good key element in a conflict-driven story. So what would you like to add to that, Victoria?
This was fantastic. Like, ooh, hot. I can't touch it. This was so good. So the most important takeaway for me is really leaning in to how putting a character trait into action can reveal key story beats or even the whole evolution of the plot. I mean, this stuff is just juicy. If you sink your teeth into it and really think about how can I move that character around by putting those traits into action and then showing the action, the reaction, and so forth, you can drive a whole story that way. I mean, guys, this stuff is gold. So, Kathleen, if people wanted to find out more about this, where might they find out a little bit more and join us in the conversation?
You would come on over to LiLLiPub.org. LiLLiPub.org is your place for readers and writers, even for authors. We've got some published authors in our group as well. We've got great reading groups where we get together. We've got writing groups where you can have your writing critiqued and help critique the writing of the others. And we have got some fun activities, including a special activity this month. I posted over in LiLLiPub a multi-page document of all of the character traits together in one place. And we're doing an experience collection like Victoria had us do when we collected experiences in November. Only we're trying to collect all 28 character traits during the month of January. We're posting them in the Experience Cafe, the same place. And oh, we've got some great experiences. So come on over. You will enjoy reading them. You will enjoy posting your own. And Victoria is planning a workshop for us in the future where we will be able to put these to use. Do you want to tease about that, Victoria?
Well, I can't say too much, but what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through the process of taking your zero draft material, which is what the experience collection is, whether it's experiences outright, it's particular to the character trait challenge, whatever those things are. We're going to start with that zero draft material and we're going to workshop it all the way through to something that's more of a finished draft of a piece, using only your experience collection. So it will be super fun and hopefully super helpful, especially if you're stuck. These are great exercises to help you get unstuck.
So be sure to come to lillipub.org. It's the place for writers to be. See you over there. Bye-bye.